This episode of the Best Music Podcast is brought to you by bestmusiccoach.com, where you can take live one-on-one music lessons online from the comfort of your own home with highly qualified and patient coaches. Teaching music to ages 6 to adult, at Best Music Coach, you can learn how to play music by playing songs you actually want to play. From Billie Holiday to Billy Joel to Billie Eilish, they teach it all. Get 50% off your first music lesson today at bestmusiccoach.com. Welcome to the Best Music Podcast with Dan Spencer, the interview series where we talk about music and the methods for making music with top performers in the music industry. I'm your host, Dan, and this week's featured guest is Felix Cavaliere. Now, it's been 50 years since the Rascals scored a number one on the Billboard Hot 100 with their biggest hit that helped define a generation, Good Lovin'. With Felix's signature voice, the Rascals leveraged that hit for stardom, and since then, Felix has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Songwriter Hall of Fame, Vocal Group Hall of Fame, Grammy Hall of Fame, and the Musicians Hall of Fame. Felix's new book, Memoir of a Rascal, is out now, available most everywhere books are sold. However, you should go check out FelixCavalieremusic.com. That's FelixCavaliere music.com to purchase your copy. And very interestingly, the cover of the book is actually a photo by Linda McCartney. Now, fans can also expect Felix's new album, Then and Now, to arrive at the end of summer 2022. And Felix is out on tour now through July 22 with Mickey Dolenz, and more dates being added soon. So check them out live in a city near you. Felix, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Cool. So my first question for you, Felix, is how do you think of yourself? Do you think of yourself as a human being first, or as a musician first, maybe a human who plays music, or something else?
I think a human who plays music fits, yes. Yeah, I just think of myself as a lucky, happy guy, very blessed that I've been able to do what I've really enjoyed doing since I was in my teens, which was a while ago. Yeah.
And Felix, how do you define success for yourself in your career? How does success feel to you?
Yeah, with a career, it's interesting that you say that because, being in the entertainment industry, whether you're a musician or a recording artist, songwriter, or an actor, we have to keep having success. The example I give is, I come from a medical family, and my dad, and he was a dentist, and he would tell me, I'm a dentist until I decide to retire. However, you better keep making hits. You better keep making music. You better keep making, public accolades as far as, like buying, and otherwise you're not doing that anymore. You know what I mean? You're just going to fall from the wayside. I mean, especially, it's really difficult for some people who have one hit and then they're gone. Really difficult. And especially if you start as a young man, or a young woman, and then all of a sudden you're like 25 and it's over. So, I think the longevity factor is something that I'm very thankful for, because that's where the difficulty is.
Now, if I may add a 21st question here, just to follow up on that.
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about the longevity? Because, like you said, that is the critical piece for a career in any avenue of the entertainment industry. Was there any conscious strategic effort on your part to play into and try and maintain that longevity? Or was it really just a series of right place, right time, coupled with talent and hard work sort of thing?
Well, there's really no strategic effort you can make to do that, to have that happen. That's something that's, if your 5-year plan, 10-year plan is that successful, then, you really should go into government, because we could use your help, Seriously, the music industry is so volatile when it comes to things like that. For example, just to give you a quick example, and not to belabor one question from if I put out in the old days a record, let's say, it was 1968, 69. And at the same time, Beatles, Stones, Kinks, Birds, Lovin' Spoonful put out a record. Just happened to be, okay, now the radio stations, they got to figure out which one or ones they're going to play, right? You got to fit into a rotation somehow. There's only so many minutes in a day. And lo and behold, we must get our commercials in. Oh, if we don't get our commercials in, then that kind of like determines a lot as to where your successes are. And, then you get into other subjects. Okay, well, how do we get on the radio so that the public can hear it? Well, there you get into the real interesting questions of advertising.
And radio promoters and all that, yeah.
They used to call it payola. Now we have a new name for it. It's called advertising. If I buy 5 minutes of your time, what's the difference what I put in there? So it's really, the public would like to say, well, you had a hit record because, but that because is a real loaded question.
Mm. Indeed. So I think maybe the strategy is more understanding the landscape and being able to move through the landscape and understanding what it takes from A to B to actually not just write a phenomenal song that you did many, many times, but then how to take that product and actually get it into the system where the right people are pushing it to the right radio stations that are all reporting to Billboard, and then you get that whole system come together. It's
a team effort.
Indeed.
You have to hope you have a good team because most musicians we don't even know about this process until many years go by, and you happen to do a little bit of research, or in my case, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a group of people here called Leadership Music, and it's kind of like it's a 12-week, I believe. Almost like a course, but it's a real commitment. And they educate people in all of these things that, artists really don't know these things when you first start out. You don't realize what you're up against, and not to discourage anybody because it's hard enough, but there is a process, and it is very involved, very involved. I mean, that's a really, really dumb question for people to hear that, because bottom line is they think it's just magic.
Well,
it's not magic.
And I think, Felix, we could probably do a whole half hour just unpacking the process of taking a song, not even the recording of it, but just how a song gets to radio, how long it stays on the radio.
Look at the late night shows and look what happens there. Now, they used to ask us to do those shows. Now we ask them to do those shows. We need the publicity. You need to be on the air. You need to get, every time you turn on Steve Colbert, the guest is, they're doing just like I'm doing this. They're promoting a book. They're promoting a film. That's what it's all about. You've got to get in the marketplace.
So back to my 20 questions. How many hours of sleep do you need to get to avoid any negative impact to your performance and creativity the next day?
That's an unknown question. I used to believe that 4 to 6 was enough, and then I started reading certain articles about, you better get more because your bodily functions are not going to work. So I don't know the answer to that. I know that, most of us, we used to traveling, in between shows. And unfortunately, since, I don't own my own jet, I've got to be at time for the airport. So I'm used to just being very flexible. If I need to, get an early flight, I'm up. I've got like an inner clock. Most of us have an inner clock. If we behave ourselves and don't take any supplements, that we're up when we need to get up and we're asleep when we need to go sleep. It's a discipline.
So, Felix, perhaps I could clarify the question. At what point do you feel a negative impact where you're going, okay, I need to drink some extra tea today, I need to do some extra warm-ups? At what point do you feel that it impacts your vocal performance?
Well, a perfect example is this COVID period that we just went through. When you travel as much as we travel, and when you're exposed to people as much as we are, it's very important to keep your immune system up. And one of the ingredients, as you say, for your immune system to be up is to sleep. Yeah, you must sleep. I mean, that's where God put it here. We have to get that. So between your immune system and your sleep, you've got to really take care of yourself. You really do. Otherwise, the secret with me, if there is a secret, is that I was able to get involved in yoga at a very early age. And I notice that it has really, really, really made a difference in my stamina, in my health, in my elasticity, and in my voice.
Huh. Well, you actually preemptively answered my next question, which was, have you ever used mindfulness or meditation to try to impact your performance or creativity? And it sounds like you sure have,
yes.
Which is incredible.
Well, it is, again, a very lucky situation with me, because it's a very long story, but, bottom line is that I was exposed, like many of us in the 60s were, to a guru. I was very fortunate to be studying under Swami Satchidananda, who was the gentleman who opened up the Woodstock Festival.
Huh.
And, I was really involved in that. I did that for many years, and I actually spoke to George Harrison about it before I did it, because, as you know, he was involved with Maharishi.
Yes.
And of the Beatles, I think he was the most devout, the most into that. And I asked him, a simple question: is this for real? Shall I jump in, with my whole body rather than just putting my foot in the pool? And he said, yes, absolutely, please. And it changed my life.
Wow.
Really did.
Good advice from George Harrison.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about practice. Now, like you said, you've had a very successful and long career. And I'm sure at the beginning, practice was a much more, shall we say, pressing activity for you to do, because you were trying to gain skills, maintain your voice in a way, you're going in the studio all the time, performing all the time on talk shows and festivals and things. Right now, do you have a time or times of day where you like to practice, or do you sort of wait till before you're going on tour and then you start to get back into the voice?
Well, if you're speaking primarily about voice, but you also have to keep your fingers, going for the keyboards, and especially guitar players, they really have to keep going, because as the climate changes, as the clock keeps going round and round and round, your limbs and everything, they kind of slow down a little bit. You better keep that synovial fluid going, which is what yoga does. There's no doubt about that. If you do the proper techniques, they call the physical techniques of yoga hatha, H-A-T-H-A. Most of the people are aware of it now through the the yoga classes, the asanas and things like that, and it really is important. It's like that song, move it or lose it. I mean, if you don't use it, the voice is also a muscle. You got to keep it going, and it's really a good idea to practice, like, if you can do like these so-called exercises. I would like to say I do it on a regular basis, but basically I try to do it on a regular basis. Yes.
So right now, if you sit down to practice, about how many days on average a week, and then about how much time you're spending when you actually practice it, like a 15-minute warm-up thing before you actually have a singing activity to do?
We have the Rascals did a Broadway show in 2013. It was called Once Upon a Dream, and basically, when you do a Broadway show, you do 5 or 6 shows a week, and I was singing 28 songs, and I said to myself, how am I going to do this? And the people who were sponsoring it, they said, well, how about if we get you a vocal coach? Well, I've never really had one, so I went and I found this lady, this woman, and she told me, she said, if you sing properly, you'll never get tired, you'll never get hoarse. So she said, I've been listening to your music, I've been listening to you, and I think you do a lot of it innately without, knowing what you're doing. I'm going to tell you what you're doing and what you're supposed to be doing. And it really is true. If you learn how to use your breath, for example, breath, I mean, you don't have to go, you'd be surprised you can just sip a little air.
Oh, yeah.
And do the
right
same
into the belly.
thing. Yeah, exactly. You know that. But I didn't know that. If I did that without, being conscious of it. So there's these little, I won't call them tricks, but they're methods where people are able to do those 8 shows a week Broadway and sound just as good on the 8th day as long as you're healthy. So, if you catch a cold or something, which we've all done. I mean, I've been on stage many times I sounded like this, and that's another interesting thing a lot of entertainers have. They used to say the show must go on, and you'd be amazed when you step up to the mic, how everything just disappears for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then it comes right back after the show's over. You're still sick,
Wow. So I think just one interesting point there, not a question, but interesting point, because obviously, like many people, I've been listening to your voice my whole life on the radio in various placements in different places. And with a lot of singers, you can hear when they're straining and pushing in a way that's unhealthy. And I never, ever heard that in your voice, even from, going back to Good Lovin' and things like that. So I think it's very interesting that as a vocalist, you were naturally doing a lot of these things right out the gate, which also, talking about longevity, most likely has helped your longevity because you weren't, trying to, like Roger Daltrey it, like up in the stratosphere for hours at a time. Right. So, I mean, a very different proposition for longevity there for sure.
Yeah, I see and hear a lot of vocalists that, pretty famous ones too, that they're singing wrong. A lot of these people are singing wrong, and they're going to
have to go in for vocal surgery and stuff. It's crazy, man.
I mean, you can do it very easily. You have to pay attention. I mean, there were certain comedians like I can't remember their names, but these guys are screaming, man. What do you think? It's just flesh and blood in there. So again, a lot of things are just. I can't use the word luck because it's kind of fate. It's just, the other thing is when I first started singing, for the most part, until I went out as a solo artist when the group broke up, I sat down. There's a big difference singing sitting and standing.
Indeed.
You're much more relaxed when you're sitting, you don't have that strain of, I'm standing up. I've got to show that, I've got to, when you're sitting down behind a musical instrument like an organ, you can
you're hiding behind it. It's a shield.
You can drift into space, man, and just go, and you don't use as much strained muscles as you would, I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating right now, but I think it had a lot to do with it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
there's definitely something to be said for the security that an instrument provides for a vocalist, where you can sort of hide behind the instrument, and then also it helps you match pitch. You're not as physically exposed, and there's all sorts of psychological inputs that come into play there. So right now you mentioned that you're doing sort of a 15-minute type warm-up thing before you get singing.
Yes.
What sort of exercises are you doing? Doing like lip trills, tongue trills, breath work? What sort of things are you doing?
Basically, what this lady, Tanya, did was she gave me a series of, I think they were mostly like, all kinds of syllables. We were doing syllables. Excuse me. That's.
Oh, no worries. So, Felix, could you maybe describe the difference between a work day and what you might call a connect day?
Well, there really should be no difference. You should connect every day. You should connect every day. When people would ask, like, for example, how do you write a song? Where do you get your inspiration from? Where do you think we get it from? We get it from the divine connection. That's exactly where we get it. If you're able, when you get to a physical level of how this happens, the creative process is a really interesting subject. You can talk to people all the time. Like if you take someone like Edgar Allan Poe, for example. Now, it was well known that he did, I believe it was cocaine or opium or something to get into that state. Well, a lot of us, when we start, in my case, I really, really looked up to Ray Charles, and I looked up to a lot of these jazz talents, they all did drugs, you know?
Yeah. Heroin was really big in the jazz scene.
So we mistakenly think we need to do that to create, to be. And, you know, if you don't know, you don't know. However, there's a certain kind of like, again, you said meditative state, you know, that you go into just prior to sleeping. You know, you kind of get into this little kind of, that's where the creativity lives, right around there. You're a little space. You wouldn't want to drive a car right then, you know? I don't think I'm going to go out right now, you know? If you know how to get there, if you know how to get there, you don't need any drug. You don't need any, but you do. In other words, like, you know, when the world is going crazy, like it's going right now, you know, like, and you're looking at the news and you're saying, oh my God, you can't quite get to that place so easily, you know. So you've got to learn how to do it. Well, being a piano player, you know, again, you're sitting behind a big box, you know, and if you get a decent place where you can kind of, you know, just be yourself, you can go right into that meditative place, and the creativity comes out, it starts. Well, I find, in answer to your question, that place is very healthy. It's not only like for creativity, it's a good place to live, you know, it's a good place to keep because, you know, as I say, I study with a man who lived in that atmosphere. That's where his consciousness, of course, he worked very, very, very hard to achieve that, you know, and he also shut off the world. You know, those monks that do that, they don't exactly, you know, go out to, you know, ball games and parties, you know. But anyway, I was taught how to create that. Well, I find now that, you know, when I go on stage, it's a good idea for me to do that before I go on stage. You know, because not only am I protecting myself, but I'm also establishing a connection that the audience can feel. And if they feel it correctly, it really feels good and helps everybody in many, many different ways. You know, without them knowing it, it's still helping you. You know what I mean? It's a connection. You know, if you look at how music started, you know, seriously, you go back to prehistoric times. I mean, it was kind of like a salute to, you know, whatever force was up there, Thor, you know, you name it, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, you're praising the sun god. It has always been a divine connection. I believe music. It's a divine, you know, it's such a communication method that's, you can't even describe it. I mean, you know, like you may not understand the words, but you feel what we're saying. You know what I mean? I mean, I give you a lot of. I did a thing at the Library of Congress, which you know was for ASCAP. You know, and there was a lady there who spoke no English. She was from Colombia. And after the show, she told the translator, she said, I couldn't understand a word he said, but I know what he was talking about. You know, when you hear that, you say, okay, I'm doing it right. That's how you're supposed to do it.
And I think you make a very interesting point of people not knowing what they don't know and trying to get to that place using chemical means.
Exactly.
As opposed to mindfulness means. And it reminds me, someone who worked at a Christian bookstore once said to me, drugs tear the veil to get to that place.
Absolutely.
And meditation and mindfulness lifts the veil, and then it can come back down. There's no negativity and there's no rupture or hurt that occurs to anyone, because it's all just coming from within yourself, and you're self-generating it through your mindfulness, through your meditation, through your discipline, essentially. You're then able to try and get yourself and know what that state feels like, exactly, and then get back to it.
Yeah, when I first met the guru, the Swami, you know, he looked at me like, you know, I was, you know, he didn't know about Rascals or music or anything. He just knew there was this young guy in front of him who was really seeking, you know. And so as we were discussing, you know, in our first meeting, he says, you know, I really get a kick out of you Americans, you know. He says, I bet you if I told you there was a pill you could take and you're there, I said I would take it in 5 minutes. You know, he said, there's no pill. There's no pill. You can't take a pill to be an engineer. You can't take a pill to be a doctor. And you can't take a pill to do this. It was really fun, you know, because it's so true. You know, we look for the easy way, you know, out or in.
Yeah, in and out and around.
Exactly.
There is no time. There is no space. There is no direction. There's no up. There's no down. So, Felix, you know, this creative space, this creative mindset, do you ever take any steps to protect it? So you talked about meditating before you go out on stage. I would call that a step to sort of protect and promote this creative mindset in this space. Do you take any other steps during your daily life or when you know you're going to go into the studio, when you know you're going to be having a writing session, to protect and sort of put a boundary around that creative space?
Well, you know, I mean, seriously, again, I go back to the last question. You should live your life like that. See, in other words, like, you know, you can't say, well, okay, well, I'm going into the boxing ring this week, but the week before I'm going to go out and party all night. You know, it doesn't work because you got to be prepared for. You can't. It doesn't. It's not a switch. You know, you can't turn the switch on and off. You know, it's like, for example, like before smoking cigarettes. I mean, wait a minute. What am I doing smoking cigarettes? I mean, well, I'll stop the day of the show. No. You're causing damage to your inside. You know, and this is what, again, going back to the yoga, the principles. You know, they start to restrict your problems, health problems, mental problems, food problems, tension problems, ego problems. See, all of these things, you know, are like the bane of human existence. And, you know, like, you know, it's just so simple, you know, and you say like, well, it's not easy because we're Americans, you know, and Americans, you know, I went to India to be around the teacher, you know, and these young Indian men, you know, it's so easy, you know, for us here. We don't even sit on the same side of the bus with the women. You know, we're completely separated from what you call, like, you know, he says, I turn on American television. I can't believe it. They don't even wear clothes. You know, if you can be a yogi or in this society, you're doing pretty well. You know, it's hard.
So do you think that we could sort of summarize that as the way you do one thing is the way you do everything? So if you're trying to live a lifestyle as being a creative, it is a lifestyle, it's a life choice, and you're going to have to do everything that way to keep and maintain that creativity over the long term and develop the relationship with it.
I don't know if you're a sports fan. Look at Tom Brady.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know anything about Tom Brady?
Oh, I watched his last game, and that was a masterclass of quarterbacking if I ever saw one. My goodness.
The guy's in his 40s, man. Yeah. His diet is perfect. He maintains. He's doing everything that I'm speaking about on the athletic scene. And, you know, I mean, he really didn't even have to retire. Except for, I think he was a little tired of getting beaten up, you know. But
I bet.
You know, that's the secret. You know, how many Kobe Bryants, Tom Brady's are there out there? And there's a lot of guys that, you know, there's a lot of people, they go out there, they got so much talent, I can do whatever I want. No, you can't. You're going to be gone, dude. You're going to be out of here. But these people, I mean, you know, if we were smart enough to use them as like, kind of like, you know, this is what it takes to, you know, this is what it takes to be here when you're 40, 45, you know. Well, I'm going to be 80, darn it. So, Ben, I better do it. It's real simple, but it's not easy in America to be, you know, disciplined. It's really, really very difficult, you know, and that's okay. You know, we can handle it.
Well, Felix, we're coming up on 30 minutes record time here, and I want to be super respectful of your time. So thanks for rocking and rolling with me. I'd just like to say Felix's new book, Memoir of a Rascal, is out now. Head over to Felix Cavaliere Music. Felixcavaliere.com to get your copy. Fans can expect Felix's new album, Then and Now. It's right at the end of summer 2022, and Felix is out on tour now through July with more dates being added soon, so go check that out. Felix, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Dan, you're a joy, man. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and I hope I run into you again. Absolutely.
Hey, man. Thank you so much.